Welcome to Cultivated Live for Monday, October 28th. Yikes, this is Halloween in Media Costume. I'm Jay Rosenthal, the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program, which is called Cultivated Live. And since we launched Cultivated, our goal has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information. We do that every single day through our daily newsletter, which is called Cultivated Daily, which you can get at cultivated.news. We do that through this daily live stream, which is called Cultivated Live. So we would love if you follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, and most importantly, get our newsletter in your inbox every single day. Here's how, cultivated.news. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Matt Hutchinson. He is the Chief Product Officer at LeafLink. Matt, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Really excited to chat today.
Well, Monday morning, as fall approaches, it's a good time for coffee, but also to reconnect. The last time we talked, I was not wearing this hat. I was wearing a different hat. It was March 22nd, 2022, I think.
It's been a minute.
Seems like a long time ago. Anything happened between now and then?
I shaved my beard was one thing.
I'm not doing that.
I don't have that. I can't carry it the way you do, so I got rid of it. I left Austin, and then a lot has changed in the cannabis industry. And so excited to kind of chat through that, whether it's some of the different things that have happened on the regulatory front or not happened on the regulatory front, some of the changes that have happened with LeafLink, some of the different things that we're seeing as different markets evolve. A lot of stuff to kind of recap since we've last chatted, but So we were heads down, growing the biggest logistics business in the logistics operation. And, I think like the world has shifted quite a bit. And so excited to kind of chat about the way that things have shifted for us.
They have shifted, and I think they've shifted for the industry. And I want to run a thesis by you, and then we'll get into sort of how LeafLink fits in. Over the past, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, we've had a lot of conversation with people throughout the supply chain, people who follow the industry closely. And while there appears to be regulatory changes ahead, ahead is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because it could be months, could be years, and it's very difficult to predict when and then what the impact would be. However, the businesses that'll be doing well then and now are the ones that are going to be running more efficiently, have honed their operations, understand their customers, understand the industry and their place in it, and have really honed their operations. And as sort of the logistics part of this and a lot of the go-between a lot of brands and a lot of retailers, is that how you see the world too?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about, I guess it was a week and a half ago or so, similar conversation, honestly. And, it's some of these things that are just durable problems that all businesses need to be good at. You talked about a few of them, but I mean, on the retail side, it's understanding your consumer base, understanding, how you deal with working capital and cash flow management, making sure that you're doing a good job on the merchandising side, not carrying the wrong SKUs and getting over your skis on inventory, and then also making sure that your bud tenders are educated. These are all problems that, regardless of what happens from a legislative perspective, are what winners are going to have to do, right? And same, you could say similar things on the brand side, you could say similar things upstream in the manufacturing side, and even further up into the cultivation. And so I think like where we've kind of netted out is solve the durable problems that are always going to be there. Hope for the best from a legislative perspective, but certainly trying to structure your business around what might happen or sell things around what might happen. And we've just seen, I guess we were talking before the call, at least 2 or 3 things that we thought for sure were going to happen. I think so much momentum around SAFE last year, so much momentum around descheduling or rescheduling, this year. And those things, I think they will happen. It's a matter of when, but I think the saying is the markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. I think structuring yourself around the durable problems today to create that competitive advantage is really what's going to create a little bit of lasting power for some of these operators.
I think you are correct. And I want to talk about some of those durable problems, or at least one of them, that when you guys announce a new, I'll call it product because you're the Chief Product Officer, especially between retailers and brands, it really struck a chord, because I know in markets like California, but other markets too, getting paid up the supply chain and down the supply chain is really a core challenge and a durable problem to your work. Talk about sort of what you've rolled out, because to me, it seems like a really good solution to a durable problem that has had major impacts throughout the industry.
Yeah. So I think the product you're referring to, which we released in early Q3, is payment on sell-through, which is essentially a payment program that allows for the seller to eliminate all of their bad debt expense by having LeafLink guarantee that they will get paid by the retailer when they leverage this payment program. But I think more importantly, what that solution does is actually gets at the core of a lot of the challenges that that drive a lot of the collections problems in the space. I think it's really easy to say, retailers getting paid by the consumer, they're using that money to do something else, or they're just deciding not to pay their brands. And I am sure that there are bad actors out there, but I think, based on the many conversations that I've had with retailers, that's not usually the case. Usually the case is they have somebody who's bought too much of the wrong product, or they bought product to go get a discount, which then they expected to be able to drive a higher margin. That product doesn't sell as fast as they anticipated. It goes stale. They have to discount that product. Now they don't have the margin they anticipated. Now they're tying up capital in working capital and inventory. And so it turns into this rob Peter to pay Paul to play catch up on your bills. And it's a very, very slippery slope that you can start to get into when your cash outflows are totally disconnected from your cash inflows, which is what the industry has typically seen. And again, I want to stress it's really hard to do the forecasting thing in cannabis right now. It's really hard. You have a very, very dynamic consumer base. You have new brands coming in rapidly. You do not have historical demand data. If you look, we try and look at year over year trends on a weekly basis, right? And it's almost comical how different they are every year. Whereas if you go to a more traditional industry, you can see those things pretty clearly, and your forecasting can be significantly better. It's really, really hard to do in cannabis because of a number of different reasons. But on the flip side of that doesn't mean that the brand should have to pay for that, right? Especially if you're a brand that's moving your products. And so what payment on sell-through does is it's not consignment, but essentially it ties when cash leaves the retailer to when it actually sells to the consumer. So let's say I'm a brand and I sell $1,000 invoice to a store. The first week I sell $500 of that. LeafLink is going to facilitate the movement of that $500 to the brand the following week. And throughout that entire life cycle, the brand and the retailer both have the exact same view into how much of that product is still sitting on the shelf. And so what we've found is that there are certain SKUs that sell really, really well. Unsurprisingly, when you talk about it out loud, it's like, oh, well, this college town likes bulk flower, not prepackaged flower. Some of these oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, this store was holding 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the SKU, of prepackaged flower that wasn't selling. And the brand's like, why isn't this moving? And they're like, well, our customers don't want it. Right. So they worked on a discounting cadence so that that product's not sitting on the shelf. But it also eliminated the stockouts of the bulk flower that they were selling along the way. So it creates this level of collaboration because of that shared viewpoint of what's moving what's moving for the customer.
Yeah, it is one of these things that sort of going back to the beginning of the conversation, efficiency, effectiveness, certainly exchange of funds is important, but also honing the operations from both sides, from a brand side, from retailer side. What is the demand? How is it selling? What are the price points? And then how do we all get paid in the process of selling a product that consumers want? It is this how do we be a better operator today because we can't plan for what is ahead, because ahead is too far of a question mark. Are there other things that you think about from a LeafLink perspective that you're coming in and saying, we think the operations could be honed this way, or we're going to facilitate these transactions between brands and retailers better, more effectively, either so that they mirror what happens in the other part of the economy, or that are specific to cannabis that are just unique because of dynamic consumer base, regulatory, all those things.
Yeah. Look, there are best practices and learnings that you can take from other industries, but trying to wholesale move something from another industry to cannabis. Right. And I think you could say that about most industries transparently. I think there is no cookie cutter kind of playbook. Right. But I think the things that come to my mind are I always come back to what I've learned historically, and I try and boil it down to the most critical pieces. And so when I was in consulting and looking at some of these large retailers out there, it was connected supply chain where you're sharing and collaborating upstream and downstream. And so that ultimately enabled your vendors to be better vendors in terms of having the right product in stock, in terms of structuring their operations in a way in which they actually are having better margins to help them be sustainable and viable for longer, which de-risk you as the retailer. And so I think we try and structure our solutions around creating that interconnectivity and building the trust between the brand, retailer, and manufacturer and the supply chain, and then even further upstream to cultivation. A few of the areas that we spend a lot of time thinking about are the banking challenges of cannabis. And so, in addition to some of the receivables, things that we think we can solve for, we think the industry is underbanked. There are banks, do not get me wrong. Like, there are certainly plenty of banks in the industry, especially at the local level. The problem is that they lack sophisticated staffing, and the compliance processes are heavier. So that the expenses that kind of are tied to those are challenging. And then, I don't know, I don't mean to speak ill of things like credit unions, but a lot of them just don't have the financial wherewithal to invest heavily in their actual technology platform. And so as an operator, instead of getting what I call a 21st century online banking experience, you're kind of dealing with lack of mobile applications, not having the ability to upload checks, having to wait multiple days for ACHs, high cost with cash. And so our acquisition of Dama earlier this year was really centered around how do we take basic things like credit lines and basic things like cash logistics, and make those more readily available in a single way across the entire industry, allowing for small and medium sized businesses to be able to access kind of what are pretty standard solutions in most other places. Just try and bring some of those things here. And so banking is a place where we're spending quite a bit of focus. Another, then really, how do you connect the wholesale procurement journey to your working capital and to your banking experience? Those things are much more interconnected than you might think. And then you take it a step further, and it's how do you start to solve some of the what I would consider one of the core challenges around retail inventory management to help buyers be more successful in their roles, help them understand which SKUs they should be carrying, what price points should they be targeting. Very, very often you see 5 or 6 of the exact same form factor, with the exact same price point, with the exact same target customer, all sitting on the shelf. They all might be phenomenal products, but you're all targeting the exact same customer, which means you're going to cannibalize each other at the retail shelf, ultimately leaving that retailer on the hook for paying for that product that's going stale. And what we typically see is those things then get discounted and passed back to the brand, and everybody kind of loses when the inventory is sitting stale. So that's where we think that, given our vantage point of seeing what's going on at the retailer, seeing what's going on at the brand, having the financial services in between, can actually create a much more trusted and transparent supply chain between these operators.
That's really that's the nugget right there, right? Like, that's the thing. And this is like more efficient operations today. You'll be better off long-term. You'll be more profitable and efficient today. And you need the tools, technology, teams to help you get there. And that's why it's sort of why we wanted to connect with you, but also why it's good to know that the industry is being responsive, to what it's hearing, but also to where we are today, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Imagine 5-6 years ago, these things were in place. It would have taken a genie to know that this was like, these things were going to be needed. You live and
it's
you learn
wild.
and you adapt.
I mean, 2019, I came into the industry and it was like, oh, legalization 2-3 years away. Yeah, it's so naive at the time, but that was kind of like that was where we were. All these states were legalizing. It was passing every ballot. Public sentiment was a certain way. I think it was like end of 2020. The Democratic Party kind of takes control of all three, and it's like, hey, this is going to happen. Not the case, obviously.
It's 2024. We have an election from tomorrow. No, it is, but it is. And I was saying something. I want to zoom out a little bit because I think when we look back 20 years from now, there will have been a massive amount of change between 2020 and 2025. Those will be the seminal years where most of the states came online, big markets came online. Maybe Florida in a week, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Illinois, like Michigan, Missouri. Like there is a lot happening.
A ton is happening.
It just seems like when you spend your days talking about it, it's like raising a kid. Like days seem like a year, years seem like a day, right? I think that's sort of things like that.
It's super interesting because, like, you see it even on a very micro level within the business. Like you see the end goal, right? You just want to get there so fast, but there are a lot of steps, a lot of steps that sometimes are not appreciated to getting there. And you're right, you're spot on. A lot has gotten accomplished in the last 5 years. I remember when we first launched the logistics business in Michigan, our transportation partner was picking up garbage bags full of like $100,000 to then, without us knowing about it, transporting it between different locations. And like the industry it still happens in some places, don't get me wrong, but it's come a long way since there. And I think the maturity levels of the operators has gotten significantly better. And so, these problems that we're facing, I think are all much more complex problems than we faced 5 years ago. I think they'll continue to get more complex. The quest for profitability is never gonna end. You're always gonna want to look for more. But I do think there's a lot that the industry should be incredibly proud of for the last 5 years.
Well, Matt, I appreciate your time. I think you are correct. I look forward to connecting again, maybe in a couple of weeks.
Let's stay closer. Yeah.
Or in a little week out. We'll do it face to face. You won't have a beard by then. Oh, maybe you might have a beard by then, and I certainly will. So we'll marry up our beards in Las Vegas. Matt, thanks for making time. Matt is the Chief Product Officer at LeafLink. We will connect with you as time goes on. We'll be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern for the next round of Cultivated Live. Remember, get our newsletter at cultivated.news. We deliver it every day. It's a great read. Matt, if you don't get it, I'm going to put you on the list right now. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.